Hello and welcome back. This is MC1 Gamer, and I felt the need to post another video with some explanation about some mistakes I had made in a recent tournament. And they've come to light since I started putting together some of the battle reports. And this entire topic really comes from not just my own experience, but from experiences I'm seeing other people talk about, and some of it's in jest and in good fun. But it's a fairly serious topic when you talk about the tournament scene, and that's knowing your list. Know your damn list. And what I mean by that is that you go to a tournament, you really need to know what you're bringing and do your homework. And it's just not acceptable to make a mistake. And I've made some mistakes with my recent list. I mean, I brought Nagash to a 3-day tournament. The mistakes, and I'll explain the details. It's not actually not a 3-day tournament, 3-game tournament. The mistakes didn't actually work against me. I mean, it worked for me. They actually worked a little bit against me, but they were still mistakes, and they could have had an impact. And it leaves a little bit of a taint when you are in a competitive circle and you make these mistakes. It's incumbent upon you to know your damn list. And I know that Ant from the Sustainable Center has made this point. He kind of chides, and it's kind of funny, Naren for making some serious mistakes. Well, I wouldn't say serious, but they had major implications, even though they were unintentional, at the GT. And Naren took home a Best General trophy. And, look, it doesn't take away the fact that he has not just done it once, he's done it multiple times. So I don't want to take anything away from Naren. But it's kind of funny to watch that, and I laugh at it, but I did it myself, and I have made some major mistakes, so I want to point them out, to have full disclosure. And these mistakes, some of these mistakes actually carried over to my recent game with Anthony with Nagash. So I want it out on the table, and I want to explain it, and I want to apologize, because it's my responsibility to know the specific rules of my list, of the things that I bring to a game. If it's a casual game, it's not such a big deal. If it's a tournament, it's really your responsibility. And I'm not the only one this has happened to. Many people, I'm sure anybody here who's ever been to a tournament knows about a situation with somebody, whether it's yourself or somebody you played against or whatever, and it changes the game. It can change the game. And even if it doesn't change the game, it kind of can leave you with a bad taste in your mouth. So let me explain to you some of the details of what actually happened. And again, I don't think these were profound, but the fact that they happened at all, I think it's appropriate for me to put it out there and express it, because anybody who's reading my battle reports or seeing any of the results, and especially because I brought a shit kicker list with Nagash, this is really important that I put it out there. So the first thing is I brought Nagash, and he has a magical item, which is a staff that allows him to store 4 dice. Now, if I had read appropriately, if my reading comprehension was up to snuff, if I hadn't just read it maybe once or twice and not absorbed it, I would have realized that it really specifically says that he can store power dice. So this means that you can't store the dice like the Black Periap, which I use quite a bit in my Vampire accounts list. And this is probably why I assumed this was the case. Because with a Black Periap, you can store even in your opponent's phase, and it's very common that your opponent may not get all his spells off, and maybe you're holding back your dice, and if there are any dice left over, of course you're going to store them over so you can then use them in your casting phase. Well, the limitation with the Staff of Nagash is that he can store 4 dice, but it has to be power dice. Now, you can store them, and you can use them not only in hand-to-hand combat and convert them into heroic killing blow attacks, but you can use them as power dice. But you're not supposed to be able to store your dispel dice and then use them in the following phase as power dice. You can have power dice that you can translate over into other effects. That's a big distinction. Excuse me. And that can have a serious impact on the game. Now, just to talk about this, in my first game, on first turn, before I got to do anything, the staff was popped. And this is the tournament at the only game in town in Somerville. The staff was popped, which I found hysterical, by the way. So this didn't come into play. And my second game, I think I had 1 phase where I was able to store any dice. And I'm not sure, I don't remember exactly if it was even consequential. So this is the only time I think this actually came into play at the tournament, because I had rolled well. I have a lot of other things that have had impact or didn't have impact that I think kind of mitigates it. But I remember the situation where I just had very, very bad luck when it came to playing against the Skaven opponent. And I'm not going to say exactly what happened in my final game at the tournament, but I will say this: it didn't go the full 6 turns. I spent 1 turn early in the game where I just completely blew past my magic phase, which is ludicrous. This is my own stupidity. It's my responsibility to know the order of the phases in the game, and it's just unforgivable as a player to forget their own magic phase when you have a magic centric list. When I have Nagash, the most powerful necromancer in Warhammer, and probably the best wizard in the game, or if not the best, certainly arguably the best, and to forget a critical magic phase on the final table of the game to see who's going to actually come out on top in a tournament. That's just ludicrous and stupidity on my part, and that worked against me. But that didn't have anything to do with the fact that I had forgotten and made some mistakes in some of these rules. But this didn't really come into play in that game. But the fact that I didn't know this, that's my responsibility, and that's my fault. And certainly, I apologize to my opponents just by virtue of the fact that I made that error. This actually did come into play a little bit in Ant's game, but I'll go over that in just a second. The other mistake I made was when it came to the Casket of Souls. Excuse me. The Casket of Souls is supposed to generate dice in the magic phase that you can then use if you're within range for your wizards that are casting. It adds to the power pool, die 3. And my mistake in that was I was using it in my opponent's magic phase, and I didn't. This was during the tournament, and again, I don't think it came up terribly in my favor because of what I did against myself. But look, this is still a mistake. Ant actually was finished his game early, which is pretty common with him. He's a much quicker player, and I have a list that requires so many more variables where it takes a lot more time to do everything. You're working with a lot of summon items, and we were taking our time because it was an important game for the tournament. And he came over, and I guess Ant's one of those guys, and I don't fall him for it because I think it's important that everybody be on the up and up when you're in a tournament scene. But he looks over, I guess, lots of different rules, and he found that I was doing it on the wrong phase, and he quietly showed it to me, and I felt terrible, and obviously I then played it right. But that's a big deal. I think he did the same thing with Naren after the fact, like 2 games later at the GT. So I guess he double checks these things, and that's smart. You're supposed to do that. You want to make sure that the game is being played right. But the thing is that could it have had a major effect in the game? Maybe, and on these types of things, the things that occur, sure, but it's still, again, I can't say it enough. It is the responsibility of the player to know their list. And as Skaven and AZ said yesterday in their group chat, it's not only your responsibility to know your list, but you should know your opponent's list. You should be prepared, and that's a lot of friggin' homework. Look, this is a hobby. It's not a profession. All right, this is not like professional video gaming where people are able to make any kind of money. This is a hobby, which is astonishing that even exists. By the way, I love the fact that that's actually an industry where you can make money, but you can't do it in Warhammer. You can't do it in Warhammer. You're not doing it in Warhammer. So we're all doing this. We're spending money. We're taking time, and it's tough to be doing the homework on all the new books, all the new rules, especially when they come out rapid fire like End Times. But it's still your responsibility when you're going to an organized event. So that was the one that worked a little bit in my favor, but I don't think it had a tremendous impact over the course of the game. What had a tremendous impact over the course of the game that I think kind of even these things out, not an excuse, but is the fact that I completely had a brain cramp when it came to the Hierotitan. During the tournament, not once did I use a Hierotitan special ability. I have the Hierotitan for a reason. And it's not just so that I could use the potential for his bound spell capabilities, but it's also because he enhances the magic capability for the Undead Legions. And whether it's Nagash or the level 1 that I had for invocations, because that's all he had. He had an invocation by level 1. which was to protect Nagash, try to help him store any wounds that he lost, or to bring back any of my archers that were removed, or even crypt horror wounds. The rule is that if you have a wizard within 12 inches, and it's a friendly undead wizard, so it covers the gamut for the undead legions. This is not something that'll help another army. You get an extra die 3 to the casting result of each spell you attempt. This is something that will have an impact with the new batshit crazy Kane rules, by the way, because on top of Undead Legion's capabilities, there's other army mechanics like the Skaven Warpstones that can add on top of some of the limitations there are, that like the die 6 die off. But we weren't playing Kane rules at this tournament, and I didn't use this once, and that kind of balance this out a little bit. It actually, I think, kind of worked against me, but it doesn't make it right. But just to let you know, if you're seeing my battle reports, and again, for full disclosure, this is how I hamstrung myself. That die 3, let's average it out. Over the course of a 6-turn game, that's 12 dice that I screwed myself out of, that I paid points to get. And I didn't get them, and that's just, again, unforgivable. It's stupid on my part. Apart from forgetting an entire Magic phase on the final Table 1 game of the tournament, I went throughout the entire tournament limiting some of the additional capabilities that I had on an average of 2 dice a Magic phase when I was casting. So it does lend itself to some of the power of Nagash, that even without this extra ability, I was able to, in many cases, dominate Magic. But this did reduce some of the capability that I had made mistakes in my favor, I look at it as, maybe karma, but still, I need to put it out there and express that, look, if I'm going to make a mistake in my favor, well, fine, that's bad enough. But if I'm going to make a mistake that's against my opponent, I should really rephrase that. If I'm going to make a mistake that hamstrings me, that's fine. That's my own stupidity, and I got to suck that up. But if I make a mistake that is a disadvantage to my opponent, that's a different story, okay? And I think it's twice as bad. And so I wanted to throw it out there. I will say this: in a casual game setting, this isn't a big deal. People make mistakes all the time. It happens all the time. You've got to accept that, especially when there are new rules, new books, new characters, new armies. But look, I don't think we should be taking the local scene and the casual scene seriously. Even if we're practicing up for a tournament, because that's why you want to have those practice games, to make those mistakes. Even if you get all the rules right, you want to see what kind of mistakes you make from a strategic point, so that you can adjust your tactics when it comes to the actual organized competitive circuit, the competitive event. When it comes to the actual event, you better get that stuff right. And so that's why I say, myself included, know your damn list, because there's nothing worse than coming out of a tournament, whether you have success or failure, and thinking, hey, this didn't go the way it should have. We see this in professional sports, and we see this in high school and college sports as well. Mistakes get made. We've got to accept that. That's going to happen, and sometimes you just got to move on and not fret about it. You do the best you can, though, to get it right. If you're a fan of baseball, the call out at home. Did it get it right? The call out, the tag at second base. What was it? Was it a tie? In football, is the guy's foot out? I can go on and on. This happens all the time, and we rage at the TV. We rage when we're in the stands. We flip out because it has an impact on our team. And then we sometimes are quiet when it works in our favor. It's going to be the same thing in Warhammer, and it's not that different. But the major difference is that when you're watching someone else do it, as opposed to you being on the team. I did a lot of sports in high school and college. I was on teams. When you're there, and this translates also into Warhammer. When you're there in a competitive scene, and it's you standing there and you impacted, and I think it's even more so in some respects when it comes to Warhammer, because you're not on a team, you're by yourself. You're standing there next to somebody, and it's mano a mano. And if there's a bad call, and you're the person that derived that bad call, you're the reason why it happened, you have to, you need to use it as a learning experience, and I am going to use it certainly as a learning experience, although I don't know how much it's going to impact, because I can't see a future where I'm going to be playing Nagash very much. I'm sure he'll hit the table with some big games when there's an equally powerful and crazy list that's going up against him. But as I've said before, he ain't coming out for any casual games. Neither should he, and neither should anybody expect that that's going to happen. And neither should anybody accept that he should be plopped on the table without knowing in advance and preparing for it. But look, it's a situation where you need to use it as a learning experience. You can't fret about it and flip out about it and be upset about it, but you need to acknowledge it, and you need to accept it, that there was a mistake, and own up to it. And that's what I'm doing. I don't think it had a profound impact on the tournament. It may have had a minor impact. It may have had an impact against me. In my game against Anthony, which Anthony posted earlier today, and I have my own video that I'm going to do, so if you want to see it from a different perspective, I welcome you, and I hope that you'll actually tune in for mine as well. But he really nailed the game pretty effectively, and he's been battle reporting a lot longer than I have. But the fact is that, as a dwarf player, and we only played 3 turns, by the way, I corrected all the mistakes that I made during the tournament, with the exception of the staff. And I will say this, again, I'm sorry, Anthony, that I made that mistake. Our game was not really serious. It was just like a what-if game. And just to see how, because we didn't get a chance to meet at the tournament, and we had very similar results in the tournament as far as generalship. So we just threw it out there, and he had challenged me prior to the actual tournament itself, and he wanted, and since we didn't get a chance to do the actual challenge as one of the games, I threw it out there and said, and he agreed easily, very quickly. He's the guy's game for anything. He said, sure. I said, well, let's have a grudge match, and I thought that was kind of cool to be able to actually bring those lists at the tournament and see to see the what if. But the mistake that I had made was I used the staff in the wrong way in his game, and that's discussed and was pointed out by I think it was Nick Fensky. If I'm pronouncing your last name wrong, I apologize. But it was also pointed out to me at my last video, my video on the second game of the tournament. One of my viewers, and I'm sorry I don't remember your name. From the actual viewing. It escapes me, but I think it was yesterday. Somebody pointed out that was watching my videos, and rightfully pointed out that it was a mistake to be. This is the proper way to do it. It's just power dice when it comes to the staff. And I immediately acknowledged it on my video, and I was intending. I actually recorded an intro to the third game that I'm still working on that I haven't released, explaining this. So I'm just going to leave that. I'll probably leave that in there and maybe button it up a little bit. But I was prepared to go ahead and do that. But Anthony had released his video much earlier. And he didn't even address it because he wasn't even aware of it. And he even emailed me about it, and I said, yeah, this is exactly what happened. But let me just also explain to you why, even though I'm fully at fault, why it didn't have as much impact on the game. So, and that's because I was rolling like a champ on the 3 turns that I had Magic Phase. I didn't need those dice. I mean, I think if it was 1 turn, I might have needed them. And could that have had a major impact? Sure, it might have. And for that, again, that's my fault. But let me give you the exact example. I rolled 1 phase where I rolled an 11 on my 2 dice. I'm using Lord Tremendous's dice. They really are working in my favor. I'm treating those dice right, and they, on average, are rolling very much above average. I rolled a 9 on 1 phase. I think I rolled an 11 on the last phase where I summoned up the Blood Knights, Anthony had already burned his Destroy Scroll, and he popped the one that you can get a Terrorgeist with, or even characters with, which was the way, that's what you want to use it for. So he had already had that fleshed out, and he didn't have like an extremely deep list with lots of magic counters, which I imagine you can do. I'm not sure what the rules are. I have to actually look up myself before I start playing Dwarves to make sure that I know there's supposed to be a duplication rule where you can't take crazy amounts of this, but you can help. You can very much, even more so, you can at least take 2 of these. I know, just like with the Bretonians, you can at least take 2 of these runes that actually stop, that actually like Dispel Scrolls, and one of them you can eat. So the idea is that he took a much softer list, but when it came down to my channeling dice, I rolled a 9 on one, an 11 on the other, with the correct abilities of the Hierotitan and the Casket. It didn't matter. I was max dice in both those phases. And on the 3rd phase, I rolled an 8. So I think a total of 8. So that was the one where it did have an impact. I think it was earlier in the game, and it didn't matter as much. But again, it was wrong. It was a mistake. And would that have changed the ultimate outcome of that game? Probably not. It may have had a little bit of a different sway, but it could have. And that's the point. It taints the game a little bit. I think that I think Anthony would agree, and I don't want to put words in his mouth. He can speak for himself. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, you got to know your list. You don't want to walk away from a game or come back 2 days later and play Monday morning quarterback or whatever and start reviewing everything and see that these mistakes are made. I think that we all need to accept that they are going to be made and not freak out about it and not get overly upset. But if there's a trophy involved, if there's money involved in a tournament, there's pride and prestige. I'm not a big tournament player. I'm going to certainly be going more and more. I've gone to a handful of tournaments since I returned to the hobby. Haven't gone to any GTs yet. I'm sure I'll eventually do that. But I don't want that happening to me. I don't want that to be the kind of thing that has a negative impact on my results. I would hate to walk away and find out later, like I heard from in many cases with other players post some of these other GTs, people or YouTubers who have come back and just said, my opponent, maybe inadvertently or intentionally, was cheating. And I wouldn't want that label, and I certainly wouldn't want to have it joked about on an ongoing basis like Naren Zaid is with Anthony's chiding and Skaven and AZ's chiding against him for how he handled the Storm banner. I think it's kind of funny, but you still don't want to ever have that out there. I mean, once it's out there, it's we're in the internet world where everything is out there and it's out there forever, and you don't want to have that taint, even if it's a tongue-in-cheek or a joke or anything like that. Because if you are an accomplished player, if you're an accomplished battle reporter, or if you just enjoy doing it and you don't want to have somebody have a negative feeling about you, you don't want that stigma. So what a message ultimately is that I've been repeating again and again is know your damn list. It's your responsibility, and if you make a mistake, own up to it, and if a mistake is made again against you, try not to get too upset about it because it's going to happen. But we all need to do a better job of making sure that we're bringing we understand the rules of the game as best as we can, so that we have the best experience possible. Because as has been pointed out quite excessively in the last several days or the last week with all the videos, this is about having fun, whether it's a competitive game or not. We want to enjoy ourselves. We're spending a lot of time with our fellow players, 3, 4, 5 hours in a game, depending on the size of the game. And there's certainly that unwritten contract between you where you want to play fair, you want to play appropriately, you want to play right, but you want to have a good time and laugh about it. And we can laugh off mistakes or silly things that happen or some of the crazy things that might happen that just when the dice fall. But we don't want to try to skew those things, certainly not intentionally, because that's unforgivable. Any intentional mistakes like these that would be made, I think you probably only get the one strike on that one. But when you make these mistakes, you better not unintentionally. You better not make them a second time, because then that question will come into play. So again, look, it's out there. I want people to know. I'd rather have you guys know it from me than hear about it after the fact. And I was fully intending to, as you'll see when I post the next video, that these mistakes were made. And I hope that nobody looks at me in a negative light as a result of that. So I hope you enjoy my channel. I very much appreciate all the people who've been kind of helping, spread the word about me and my channel. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy the games that I play. I enjoy all the conversions, and I enjoy the dialogue that I have with people, even when they're heated, and even when we disagree. I just, I do enjoy being part of this community, and I'm really looking forward to the future. Although on another topic, I'm a little concerned about where Warhammer End Times is going with Kane. But that's, again, we'll leave that to other videos and other hair-pulling conversations about that. Have a great day, everybody, and thank you for tuning in.